Okay, it is the late afternoon, early evening of Saturday, December 16th, 2017, in the lunar cycle Misamiko Komiatos, the long night's moon, which is the third of 7 winter lunar cycles. And I'm just circuiting my way home a little bit indirectly through the coulees from my sister-in-law's house, which is really about 2 blocks away from mine. Came from a very unfortunate scene, and I'm upset about it. And part of why I felt like I should just take a walk. The other part is it's getting to be dusk, and I might hear some owls, and it'll be good to know the potential location of some owls for the bird count, which is tomorrow, the annual Audubon Christmas bird count for Lethbridge. Anyway, the scene that I came from at my sister-in-law's was very tragic. She messaged me a few hours ago and asked me if I would come and look at her blue heeler, Tibby. She was concerned that he might have rabies. And I thought, that seems pretty unlikely, because I saw Tibby like 2 days ago, and he was, his normal self, which is to say a lot of moving muscle, very strong, very active, very excitable, and loving, overly loving to where it, he loves too hard. Tiberius, Tibby. And yeah, she said she was worried about him having rabies, which seemed pretty odd. So I walked over. We had a little bit of snow yesterday and stuff overnight, but I still walked over in my bare feet this afternoon to go check out what was happening, and went out on their back porch to look down at Tibby on the lawn, and Tibby was not acting himself. He had signs that, when I was looking at him, I was kind of in agreement with my sister that this must be rabies. I've never seen rabies myself. I kind of know, what the complex is, like the symptoms and stuff, how they're supposed to appear. And, I deal with wildlife, raccoons and such, that are potential rabies carriers all the time. I've never seen it. So my concern about rabies here locally has been very low. But when I looked at Tibby in the backyard, there was long drool, coming out of his mouth. His jaw was slack. He had his tail between his legs, and it looked like he had been standing in one spot for a while, because there was a large urine circle in the snow below him. His tail was between his legs. He was obviously scared, and I think hallucinating. There came a point where he started moving around, cringing and running, and just acting like he didn't know what was going on, So I watched this, and then I gave my brother-in-law and my sister-in-law my opinion, which was that I think Tibby had rabies. And of course I cautioned that, you know, we can't go around that saliva, and because that's what's going to have the virus in it. And pretty much you just gotta isolate Tibby for 10 days, and if he dies, it's probably from rabies, and if he pulls out of it, you know, he pulls out of it. So yeah, so my thinking was that it was rabies. And so Claire, my sister-in-law, phoned another friend of ours who works at the animal control in Lethbridge here, to see whether or not they could take Tibby and isolate him. And he was told, you know, basically they could surrender Tibby, and that it would be $300 to do that. And so so they figured, no, they'll just keep hold of him in the backyard for 10 days and see what happens. You know, meanwhile, while they're doing this phone conversation, I walked home. My feet were kind of chilled, and so I put on some sandals and walked back. When I came back, I brought my GoPro with me because I thought I might film some more of the behavior and put it out there for opinions. And then, but when I got back, Tibby was just hiding in this corner between the garage and the fence line, in a tight little corner there. And I went to go look at him there, and he wasn't really responding. Hey, Tibby. I guess he's just been in this corner for a bit since I left before. Can't see him from over here. Definitely acting strange. Tibby. I had the sense that this was just going to go on for a little bit, and then he would flip back into some other behavior. So I left him there and went back home again. And then, you know, it was only 5 minutes maybe between leaving Tibby and going back home, and then I was telling Mahoney about what was happening, and Claire messaged me and said he died, just there in that corner where he was. He just died. And and then we start wondering, well, was that rabies then? Because there was no kind of signs of any, you know, symptoms, any of the lesser symptoms previous. You know, I saw Tibby, like I said, a couple of days ago, 2-3 days ago. He's perfectly himself. It was just last night that suddenly, you know, the symptoms that looked rabyish had gone from 0 to 100. Just quick. And, you know, the question was brought up, maybe he was poisoned. Because, you know, truth be told, in the other residences right around Clare, at least a couple of those people don't like that Tibby. Some of them seem to have some potential racial bias as well, racial biases. You know, my little 11-year-old niece went to go enter her house after school, and the neighbors called the police on them because they thought she was breaking into the house, probably because she's native. There's always this in the background, hey, when something is fishy, and you know, and also when there's just tensions. Like Tibby was a rambunctious dog, but you know, Claire really liked him, and really liked him because he was so, you know, rambunctious and stuff that it's intimidating. And she wanted him as a guard dog for their house, you know, and he did that service well. But some of the neighbors didn't like it because he's a big dog, and he could be loud too. If he was in the backyard for any sustained period, you know, he might be loud. So, you know, there was a lot of complaints about Tibby from neighbors, but then there was a lot of other stuff, or at least some other stuff that went on with the neighbors that brought in this, you know, also this this undertone that's just a constant flavor of life here, unfortunately, that there's these racial tensions too. You know, I feel bad about the whole thing. You know, whether or not Tibby ends up like having been poisoned, which is possible. I've seen dogs poisoned a lot of times from rodenticides. When people out here put poison for the ground squirrels, there's always a wave of death of other animals, including domestic animals, including dogs. And when dogs get that rodenticide in them, the symptoms are different than what I saw in the backyard with Tibby today. When the dogs get that rodenticide in them, they are really trying to vomit it up. There's this constant attempt, this constant heaving to try to get it out of their system, and it just won't go, you know. There's salvation sometimes with that, but it comes from the attempt to vomit, I think, not because of you know, like of the virus. That's the agent that carries the virus with the rabies. Yeah, and there's a lot more difficulty breathing and things like this with the dogs that have been poisoned. Tibby, the symptoms look different than any of the poisonings that I'm familiar with, which is not to say that he wasn't poisoned. If he was, I find that really disturbing, because I live in the same neighborhood, you know, a couple blocks away, and because this is my sister, like, I don't like to see her upset like she was today. If I knew that it was a neighbor and I knew who that was, there might be more drama today. Well, there almost surely would be. So, yeah, I hate to think that that could be the case, that it would be some kind of poisoning. But like I say, the symptoms don't match what I'm familiar with dogs that have been poisoned. But then I'm only used to seeing how they respond to certain rodenticides. I don't know, something else entirely could have happened that brought this on with Tibby. He's a young dog. He's about not even 2 years old, I don't think. and he's one of the puppies of a couple of dogs that were owned by the late Okan Hungry Wolf, who's Claire's cousin, first cousin. Okan just passed away way too young, just about a year and a half ago. So there was that connection too with Tibby. And yeah, he's just young, prime of his life, very strong and healthy dog. Goes from 0 to 100% sick and dies in under 24 hours. So what could that be? Doesn't sound like rabies, does it?